I just wanted to welcome everyone who's tuning in today. We are here to talk a little bit with Crystal, who is the president of the National Inuit Youth Council. And without further ado, I wanted to invite her to share a little bit about herself and her responsibilities, and we'll get down to the nitty-gritty. Would you mind telling us a little bit about your role? I know you've been in, you have a 2-year term, and you've been in there for about a year now. Can you talk a little bit about what that entails across the country?
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. It's been a little bit over a year now since I was elected president of the National Inuit Youth Council. And what so with the National Inuit Youth Council, they represent the interests of Inuit youth in Canada. And council members essentially make up each of the Inuit regions, Nunavut having 3 members of council due to the different regions. So we have a total of 6 council members across Inuit Nunavut. And our focus and mandate are based on Inuit youth priorities. And these priorities are compiled from the biannual National Inuit Youth Summit. And so we were actually supposed to have NIYC this year.
I'm sure that got canceled.
Yeah, so we postponed it to next year. But this is where we collect Inuit youth priorities. And based on the priorities of Inuit youth, those are what we then tackle at various committees or working groups within ITK. Oftentimes, they also have government officials as well that are represented within those committees. So that's essentially what we do. That active participation in voicing Inuit youth priorities at these working tables are where a lot of the work takes place.
Yeah, I think this work is absolutely essential. I think it's a little bit cliche to say, but youth are definitely the future of tomorrow. And so making sure that their priorities are put in the spotlight is really important, particularly when we're talking about, communities that are located often, well, when we speak about Inuit youth, a lot of the times they're in the north as well. So they face different kinds of struggles that you might face if you're in an urban center, for example. Can you give us a little bit of an idea of what the breakdown is maybe of what population of Inuit youth is living in the north versus in more dense urban centers?
I don't have the statistics on that, okay. But there definitely is a growing number of Inuit that are relocating to southern Canada.
Okay.
And a lot of it, of course, when you look at it, oftentimes it's infrastructure related, lack of housing availability within their communities, lack of support services available in their communities. Educational opportunities as well within southern Canada. And there's just so many varying factors that that Inuit start to think about and make their decisions based on what is best for them and their family. Of course, in southern Canada, it's very different. I live in southern Canada. I have been raised in southern Canada for majority of my life. So I can definitely understand the struggles that Inuit youth are also facing in southern Canada when it comes to navigating this, new Kadlunak or southern way of system, right? And it is extremely tough. But comparing the two, it's kind of hard because even based on each region, they're all different and each community different. And then if you're comparing, southern Canada to Inuit Nunavut, I think the most common thing that comes up is a lot of it is around accessibility of support systems that is culturally safe and within the language of choice as well.
Those are some very important points. And I'm sure you did mention that, the struggles or the challenges are different depending on which community you go to. And as a representative, I kind of skipped right over this question, but I was wondering if you could talk about some of the key issues that Inuit youth are talking about from the West Coast to the East Coast in urban centers or more remote areas? What are the things that they'd like to see be addressed at the national level?
Of course, suicide prevention is a priority of NIYC. That is what has been brought forward to us by Inuit youth across Inuit Nunavut. You know, the great thing about this era right now and to be living in this era is that Inuit youth have been so vocal. And it's so like empowering and impactful to see so many Inuit youth that are taking strides and leadership to combat some of these issues and have these tough discussions with their community leaders, their regional representatives, even on the national stage. There are so many Inuit youth that are coming forward and talking about this and demanding change. So it's definitely a great era to be in. You know, another thing as well, like I was thinking about this question was, there's so many youth across the globe that have always been vocal, that have always essentially used their voice. But what I've found is like the media hasn't really amplified their voices until recently. So now, you know, on the news and within, you know, newspaper articles, you're seeing, you know, youth that are stepping forward, that are taking center stage, that are providing, you know, way forwards or strategies of what to do or what to focus on. And it's being shown now, but youth have always been vocal. It's just a lot more prominent now because the media is like, oh my goodness, look at this, right? So I think, but excuse me, if you're looking at straight across Inuit Nunavut, you know, the suicide prevention awareness being a priority, housing crisis is an issue across Inuit Nunavut. Also the you know, educational opportunities, employment opportunities. There's just so many different areas that are being focused on, and it's really dependent on each individual as well, and how comfortable they are in having these discussions.
Yeah, there's certainly difficult discussions to have. And, you know, you're just really bringing out a lot of the challenging parts about having them is that mental health in particular, since that's a priority of both Project Aliana and of the NIYC, they're complicated. It's not as simple or black and white as just saying like, we need to do this thing or this is the solution. It does involve housing. It involves opportunity. It involves reconciliation. It involves access to services. And so that was part of the reason why we wanted to bring you on board, because you do get a chance to explore and see the various ways that these things are connected. And I could not agree with you more on the impressive nature. Like, youth have always been like at the forefront of change, but especially with the way that social media gives voices to people that didn't necessarily have them before. It's incredible. And, you know, there's one young lady, I remember reading about her story. She's from Nunavik, and Project Aliana is, of course, based in northern Quebec. But she biked across the country.
Yeah.
Jessica.
Hannah.
Hannah. No, it was Hannah. It was Hannah. And I just remember reading her story and thought, you know, that's a goal that a lot of people want to do, but the reason behind her doing it was even more inspiring and powerful. And when you see youth taking the reins, when government sometimes is a little bit slower to respond, obviously there's a lot more hoops to jump through, or local communities, it's really empowering to see young people take the role in their communities as the leaders. So thank you for highlighting all of that and being, you know, a consolidated voice for some of these youth that are trying to bring voices to the front stage. It's really important. Um, on the note of being elected and being the voice, I'm sure you came into the presidency thinking you were maybe had some specific goals that you wanted to tackle or some key objectives. Have they changed? I'm sure with COVID, it's been confusing and lots of things have changed in life, but has your direction as in this leadership role changed in the past 6 months or in the past year? And what have those changes looked like?
Yeah. So when I first decided to run for presidency, I was really looking at, overall, like how the high level, how are they connected? And so, of course, focusing on education, that was definitely an area that I felt very strongly about, but also health. And health has so many different connections involved with it, with mental well-being, with healthcare, and so on and so forth, and also our economy. Looking at alternative ways of improving the economy in Inuit Nunavik, Inuit youth going into entrepreneurship, for example, and just kind of looking at those areas. But it's not that there's been a shift, but when you become president, you have to also follow the priorities of Inuit youth. And those priorities are in there. It's just a matter of being able to look at, what are the top priorities of Inuit youth and how can I ensure that these are voiced at the national table, with the ITK board and also with the Inuit Crown Partnership Committee as well, which includes federal government ministers. And so it's not that I'm not able to focus on that. It's more so that having the ability to kind of concurrently manage multiple priorities and also looking at what are the opportunities as well. How can I participate in these engagements or these discussions to bring forward Inuit youth concerns, relating to suicide prevention. Well, that falls within health. Looking at, education, that falls into infrastructure, and so does the economy aspect of infrastructure as well, or lack of, I should say. There's definitely been some crossover, where you get the chance to touch on various subjects. But since COVID, of course, it's been a very different reality for everyone in this world, and everyone in Inuit Nunavik as well, with travel restrictions, lack of infrastructure, healthcare. There's just been a lot of varying factors involved, and priorities have definitely shifted during COVID. And so what NIYC has really focused on has been, council members have been very active and engaged within their Inuit regional associations in administering any COVID-related initiatives. So they've been very busy doing that and supporting as much as they can within the community. And what we've also been trying to do along with that is ensuring that, Inuit youth understand or find different coping mechanisms about mental well-being as well. And just kind of, being a little bit more active on social media and sharing different posts that are inspiring or that, give you some, helplines or anything like that. But that definitely has been more of the focus throughout COVID is mental health.
Yeah. And I think that's been a general focus across the board, as you mentioned, for lots of different communities. I think at the beginning, there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of worry, again, across the board. In some ways, with time, people found that, having a break from the rush and tumble of everyday life was actually good in some ways. People reconnected with family members or, the friends that they hadn't spoken to in a long time, or they're spending more time outdoors. Can you talk maybe a little bit about some of the the harder or the challenges that have come about? You already touched on that a little bit with your last answer, but also maybe if there's some good things that have come out of it. Have you found that youth have been more engaged doing outdoor or cultural activities? Have they had more time to invest in other things that are bringing them joy?
Yeah, so what we've been hearing is there's been this on the land program initiative since COVID happened. And the on the land initiative is essentially you get funding from your regional Inuit association. And I think it varies by region, but there is funding available depending on the region so that you can self-isolate for 14 days.
Okay.
And so you would get all of your materials that you need, food that you need, anything that you would need to be able to survive out on the land for 14 days. And almost everybody has been accessing this. And we've heard nothing but great things come out of this as well, and the importance of having the On the Land initiative. It has improved mental stability. It has improved cultural connections and land connections. And like you said, family and friend connection as well. And I think this On the Land program initiative has really proved to be detrimental in terms of mental healing as well. And a lot of Inuit youth being able to have that opportunity to learn different traditional skills as well, and hearing and seeing different ways, surviving essentially. They're fishing more, they're hunting more, they're getting more country food, and it's just I've heard nothing but great things about this initiative.
That sounds like an incredible initiative. And it reminds me of a story I read about Bella Bella in British Columbia. And that this is a community that was ravished about 30 years ago by suicide. And they haven't seen any deaths to suicide in the past 30 years because they gave the land and the resources back to the community for them to create structures essentially that would work for them. And what they did was similar to that. They called it cultural revitalization and said that was the biggest preventative thing that you could do. Do you have any idea if this is a program that will continue if, for example, COVID tapers down a bit? Or
I'm not sure, but I really hope it does. This has been really a blessing for a lot of communities. Even with the travel restrictions in place, of course, some people are going to be bummed out about that as well. Some people can't see their family in, southern Canada, but borders are starting to open up between regions as well, which is really great. But this On the Land initiative, I've heard nothing but great things, and I really hope that the federal government sees that this has been very helpful for Inuit and Inuit youth. Suicide rates have gone down as well. So there was a period throughout COVID where there was no spikes, and if anything, there was, the suicide rates was very, very low compared to normal years. So clearly this On the Land program initiative is doing something, and it should continue to run.
Yeah, afterwards, I would love to grab that information. So if there's young people or people of any age would like to look into that more, would you mind sharing that link with me? And I'll make sure that we post it on our Aliana page.
Yeah, so the regional Inuit associations have it within their websites as well, so you can see what the program is about.
Thank you. That is very helpful. So I hope that anyone that tunes into this is able to check into that and see how it could benefit them. Are there other kinds of resources that you've came across in terms of other similar programming like that, or training programs or other initiatives that have come about by youth and put place by youth to address mental health, well-being, life promotion?
And I can't recall right now.
Or in general, sorry, I put that within the context of COVID. I meant to take it back outside of COVID. If there's, if there's something else that sticks out in the front of your mind.
Yeah, well, actually, like, I'm not really sure if, I don't think this was done by an Inuk youth, but somebody in Nunavut started this initiative, and it was like a peaceful protest on this suicide rates in Nunavut. And it started off really, I think it was like a Facebook post that really got a lot of hits on it, and a lot of communities participated in their communities and doing a peaceful protest. So they walked across, their community with signs up, trying to, show the government that this is an issue. And it needs to be addressed, and that I think it made national news, but I don't know if the government actually heard anything about that. But I really hope that they were listening, because it wasn't just one community. You were looking at multiple communities and hundreds of people that were, walking the streets to show how important it is to combat this issue.
Yeah, it's something that we really just as a collective, I don't think can put or sweep under the rug. I don't think that that's conducive to anybody or any community's well-being. And we all have a responsibility, I think, to play in our own well-being, but of the well-being of the people that we live with. So this is one of those topics that's it's a hard topic, obviously, but there's something that's really inspirational about youth wanting to take it into their own hands when they see that government is slow to respond, or community is a little bit slower to respond, because they are hard topics. So when you see younger people in particular motivated to make a difference, there's something really beautiful about that. And I was wondering if there are young people that are looking for inspiration or motivation, would you have something to say to them? What would you say to them?
It's really hard, just when it comes to inspiration, it really has to be something that you're passionate about. So what I would say is really, if you're looking for motivation, you really need to ask yourself some questions. You need to better understand yourself. Essentially, how do you feel about it? How do I feel about this? What can I do about it? What areas can I contribute? It could be small, it could be large, or it could be just just a gesture of sharing on social media, for example. And also kind of asking yourself, who can help me? What are my support systems? What's available out there? But and it's so hard, especially if you're trying to find initiatives, or to try and combat certain issues within your community, because there's just so many different red tape also involved, and there's so many ways of being able to navigate. And it's like, you go to one area and you're shut down, you have to go to this area, and it's just a lot of back and forth. And my advice really would be just to not give up. The times, the amount of times that you're going to run into an issue, or run into times where you're feeling completely hopeless and helpless. But those feelings pass. And a lot of it has to do with more, digging, just trying to find more information, trying to gather more people, because the more people that you have supporting you and being your ally, the more ideas you can generate. And the more ideas you can generate, the bigger the picture can get. And then you're able to kind of outsource some other ways as well. But for me, it's always that $1 million question. If I had $1 million, what would I do? Right. And how can I get there? And it doesn't have to be something simple. Like, it can be just this wild idea that you have. And no idea is a bad idea. So it's just a matter of, okay, well, how can I get there? What steps do I have to take, kind of thing?
Yeah, reaching out to people and knowing where to kind of share some of those ideas. I think that's where some of the greatest things really take place and take shape. So that's another great message, to just reach out to people as well. If you're not sure where to start, maybe to talk to some other people that are involved in things. Because I think we have this notion too that leadership, like if you're a leader, that means that you're at the front, you're people are following behind you, but you can be a leader in so many different ways. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to start a giant initiative. So good things to keep in mind. What about you? Is there a story or a person or an experience where you just like hold on to, like it's your rock, something that inspired you maybe or motivated you to keep working as hard as you work?
You know, I think like if I could share stories about the people that inspire me, I could literally sit here all day. Because like every day I find, you know, so many different people are motivating me every single day. They inspire me every single day. They could be, you know, just posting on social media about some of their struggles and how they've overcome it. You know, just their I get so inspired by, you know, their strengths, their ability to adapt, the resiliency that they carry through all of their troubles, and the love and kindness that they share with people. It's just, Inuit inspired me every single day, and I'm just so proud to be Inuk. So proud to be part of a group of people that are just such caring and nurturing people as well. It's just such a fantastic culture, and you know, having that connection to me is really inspiring. But I think what I like, for me personally, what kind of like inspired everything was really when I went back home to my home community in Senegal. I was in grade 12 because when we moved, I was only 10. And my sister stayed behind because she's adopted by my grandparents.
Is she older or younger?
She's older.
Okay.
She's the eldest. But she stayed behind, and I was so upset. I didn't want to leave my home and my friends and my family. And so I told my sister, I said, when I'm 18, I'm moving back home. So when I was 17, I was in grade 12, and I went back home for my March break, convinced my parents to let me stay there for 2 weeks.
Whoa.
And I got my community service hours so I can graduate high school in Palm Beach. I did, I volunteered at the school, and then I volunteered at the hockey rink. It wasn't even really volunteering. I had some. And, but really, like, I realized the need for Inuit to be in supportive positions. I realized, you know, when I was a kid, I didn't see mental health. I seen it in the eyes of a 10-year-old that, you know, so-and-so is having trouble. So-and-so has died from suicide. So-and-so has died from suicide. And it was just like nonstop suicide, and it just became the norm, in a sense. And it was just something that my parents weren't comfortable with. For us to see, you know, family and friends and community members struggle with mental health, struggling so much so that, you know, they ultimately ended their lives. And so for a 10-year-old, you don't see it that way. And so when I was 17, I had a little bit of a different perspective, of course, a teenager's perspective. But I seen this as I need to be back home. I need to find a way to be back home. And I really want to help my people. I thought policing was in my area. I wanted to be an RCMP officer. But then I seen that there's a different opportunity, and it was social work, you know, and making sure that there were Inuit that spoke Inuit in that field, that understood communities, that understood the history. It's not that I understood it that much when I was 17, but I knew about a little bit. But it like that's what kind of inspired me to seek change, and to advocate for change, and to advocate not just change, but a systemic change as well that works for Inuit. And that's really been my ultimate motivation is Inuit don't deserve this. Inuit don't deserve to be dehumanized in a system that was meant to destruct them. That's not right. And so anytime that I hear of any injustice, it just keeps giving me more motivation to continue this battle with, you know, the government, and keep advocating to ensure that there's equality for Inuit across Canada.
Yeah, this is, in some ways you see the government talking a lot about providing services, but until we see some of these bigger systemic changes, then it's hard to believe or to buy into that. So I can understand to some degree why that would be fuel for your fire to keep working, because they're big changes that need to happen. Could you maybe talk a little bit about how you see, because you kind of hit it a little bit, but how reconciliation and mental health and suicide prevention are connected, or how they interact?
Yeah. So the way that I see reconciliation is like healing wounds from the past. And those wounds often leave scars, they leave marks, and they leave feelings. And it's a really tough thing, because so many people are talking about reconciliation. And a lot of the times it's reconciliation amongst Indigenous people and the federal government. But reconciliation can also be worked within ourselves. Reconciling with your past is a way of healing. You're opening up those wounds, but you're also identifying different strategies to coping. And to also navigating this journey that you're heading towards for healing. But reconciliation from the government, I think, needs to change. Reconciliation isn't just about, it's not about funding. It's not. It's about equality, and it's ensuring that what has been done, the damages that have been done amongst Indigenous people, is corrected through programs, and programs that are Indigenous led, that is owned and controlled by Indigenous people. Throughout this entire colonization, it's always been about what the government wants you to do. And it's never been about what works for the people. Because if you can work with the people will be able to develop necessary strategies that work for their communities, that work for their people. Because the government is just, they have a very different perspective.
It's so big, and they do. And as you mentioned, there's red tape everywhere you go in a lot of ways. So it's hard to get that message across in many circumstances, and even across it all. So that, on top of funding and on top of the many other their struggles, makes it very difficult to get things done. And I'd agree, it's not just a question of giving out money. It's making sure that that's going to the places that the people want to go, to see it go towards, and that they are able to use that in the way that they most see fit. Are there specific services or resources or ways that you think that funding should be directed towards? Maybe I can clarify that question a little bit. Do you think that it would be, because there are so many good initiatives going out and that are being led by Indigenous people, Inuit people, and do you see it being best utilized in a certain way based on what you've seen, or things that you've encountered in your time as president?
I think, when it comes to, for example, before the federal government, Indigenous people didn't have like this system or a structure. They had traditional laws. They had traditional practices and different ways of dealing with situations. When it came to justice, or if it came to social welfare, or if it came to even healing. There's just the Indigenous way of life ultimately changed when the government came into the picture. And what traditional practices were done worked for the people. So I don't want to say that certain areas are areas that Indigenous should have ownership and control over. It's what works for the Indigenous population, because each Indigenous group are very different. Mm-hmm. And it's really up to those Indigenous groups to decide what it is that they should be responsible for. I would love to be able to see, like an Indigenous prime minister. I think that would be really cool. Just saying, just saying. But I think it's really important that whatever Indigenous groups and Inuit, whatever areas that they're looking to pursue, they're clearly pursuing it because they know it's right for their people.
Absolutely. I actually really love the idea of an Indigenous prime minister because
right?
I study in sustainable development, and I read an article recently talking about resource development in the north and how the most effective kind of management of the land was one that was in French you would say co-gestion, but like co-adaptive or co-management between the communities and the people that are working there. And if you had partners in crime to some degree running working together to make sure that the needs of the people of the country are being addressed in an equitable way, then I think that could be really positive. So if you need someone to back that idea, sign me up. I just have a couple other questions for you. We've talked a lot about a lot of different things, and as the busy young lady that you are, I was wondering what you do to keep your mind and your body and your spirit happy and healthy.
I've been very lucky to have a great supportive system. My husband and our family and our friends, and even my family and friends back home, and my colleagues. So I'm like, what I've really learned that I like how I can kind of cope with the busyness of my life is really just to kind of debunk and to be selfish sometimes, have me time. It's really hard, especially like I have two kids. I have a 10-year-old and a 3-year-old.
Really
yeah. So it can be hard. But you have to I've learned to be selfish. I've learned to say, no, I need time alone right now. What I've started to do as well too, because just going into the bathtub, that's not going to give you self-care anymore because the kids are banging on the door, right?
You have to lock it and soundproof the bathroom.
Yeah, so I've actually just recently, since COVID, started to go to the gym. And I found that exercising has really released a lot of stress. Of course, body aches come with it because I'm not an active person, not like I used to be. But I do find, when I am physically away from home and I don't have my phone on me, all I have is, the gym equipment, I'm focused on that. So I found that to be kind of like my safe haven. I go once a week, sometimes once every 2 weeks, depending on my time.
That's good though.
But I make time. And I think that's what's really, really important is to be selfish and to allow yourself time to be free of your electronics, of your laptop, of any noise backgrounds or anything that might distract you from just really focusing on you.
I really needed to hear that reminder. So I'm sure a lot of other people did as well. It's so easy to feel overwhelmed by, especially, well, you said you're in the city center as well, but I'm down in Montreal and I know that hearing cars all the time is a little bit of a stretch on my ears. So making sure to focus and know when to say no to other people's requests is super important. I hope everybody that's listening takes note to that. And I also want to compliment you on that because I'm sure it's even more of a challenge when you have 2 kids and a husband, which is almost like 3 kids.
Pretty much, yeah. Touche.
I don't want to take up too much more of your time, so I just wanted to give you the final word on talking about, or maybe shining some light on what you see or how you envision the future for Inuit people in Canada.
The way that I see it is self-determination. I think Inuit are on a really great path. Inuit youth and even current Inuit leaders, not just from the regional perspective, but community leaders and community members, there's just this, it's not like the hope is there. There's always been hope, but now like you can kind of start to see these little things that are kind of happening and popping up here and there. And you're just like, wow, that's happening. Wow, that's happening. And so with these different things that are going on, it's just so empowering to see that, you know, the future of our people and our communities is going to look much different than it is now because of active individuals across Inuit Nunavut that are taking steps and taking strides to improve their communities. So I really, you know, in the future of Inuit, I really see, you know, the self-determination so much more stronger than it is now. And I see so many that are working towards building their communities the way that they envision it as well. I'm very, very fruitful and excited to see what the future holds for Inuit, especially since so many of them have, you know, taken the lead on their own. They're not, like you said earlier, you know, they're not just the ones that are leading people. They're the ones that are also working silently.
Yeah.
And so I'm just really super excited to see what the future holds for Inuit. And I do see a really great future ahead as well.
I've certainly heard a lot of similar comments about seeing the hard work and about being excited about how much is coming to light about how people are working together and, you know, making something that works for them in their community. So thank you for sharing that. Do you have any questions? Do you comments, arguments, opinions, jokes?
No, not really. But, you know, if there are Inuit youth that are watching this and they have questions around, you know, NIYC, how they can get involved, or if they just want to generally know what's going on with NIYC, they're more than happy to reach out to me or any members within NIYC as well within their regions. The youth representatives are available within all of their regions. They can even go and knock on their door at their office, or they can, you know, give us a call or send us an email. We'd be more than happy to provide information. We aspire to see more Inuit youth that are also taking the lead in politics as well. And you know, it's last year when I ran for presidency, there were 9 candidates that ran
Whoa.
for presidency. And it was the largest,
amazing.
It's the largest number of nomination, or not nominations, but largest.
Like the pool of applicants.
Yes, thank you. Yes.
You're welcome.
The largest that they've ever seen.
That's incredible.
And so this is really good news, right? So people, Inuit youth are now looking at NIYC as an opportunity to further engage with political discussions, which is really great. And I really encourage more Inuit youth to do that. And to participate actively within, you know, their communities or their regional associations or their, you know, territorial, provincial government or the federal government. The more Inuit perspective, the better, and the more that you can kind of, you know, shake the government a little bit and say, hey, this doesn't work.
Wake up!
Yeah, for sure. So if anybody has any questions, we're more than happy to take them.
That is wonderful. Thank you. If you don't mind, I just want to thank you again for joining us and for sharing some of your insight and knowledge and ideas. They're really appreciated. And Project Aliana was co-created by a young man, Nigel Adams, and Y4Y Quebec, because he wanted to see change. And we've been able to accomplish a lot in the last year. And this is certainly because of the community and him in particular. So I just want to support what you're saying. And if there's youth out there that are listening and that want to get involved, they should check out NIYC or Y4Y Quebec, which focuses on addressing the challenges that non-Francophones speak across the country. So thanks again, Crystal, for giving me some of your time. and we'll chat soon. I'm
Yeah,
just
thank you so much for having me.